Hello everyone. So today we are going to start a new chapter on 2D elasticity. Now it may seem a little bit weird to go back to two-dimensional elasticity after we have uh, talked so much and done so many problems involving 3D elasticity, but there's a reason behind it. Uh, First reason is that uh, in the process of discussing this chapter on 2D elasticity, we will be introducing something new and something widely used overall in elasticity, which is the stress function approach. Another reason is that all this while, whenever we talked about a 2 into 2 matrix as a special case of a 3 into 3 matrix, and when I say matrix I mean either the stress matrix or the strain matrix, we did not think very carefully about the different components. But in the process of studying this chapter on 2D elasticity, we'll see that when we specialize from the 3D elasticity to the 2D elasticity, we need to be careful about certain things, certain components of the stresses and strains which may or may not be zero. Okay, so it is not arbitrarily set to zero. There is a certain reason behind setting them to be zero. Now, when we talk about 2D elasticity, we broadly classified the study into plane stress and plane strain. And before we can go into any mathematical details of modeling these two situations, let us take a look at two canonical examples to illustrate the plane stress case and the plane strain case. So first, the plane stress case. So uh, So for plane stress, what we say is that as a canonical example is that we considered a very thin plate like this. So I'm drawing its thickness here like this. This is not a very good drawing. So it is somewhat like this. So that part is hidden from view. Something like this. And again here. Okay, so I hope I have given you a nice three-dimensional view of this thin plate. And you also note that this plate is loaded in its own plane. Okay, so when I say in its own plane, what I mean is that you can imagine a plane passing through the midsection of this plate. So suppose this height of the thin plate is h, and uh, and you take the midpoint along this height and you pass a plane which is parallel to both the top surface as well as the bottom surface through that mid height, then that plane passing through the mid height, that will be referred to as the reference plane. And let us say that the loading uh, uh, that is being applied on this plate is on that mid plane. Okay, so let us represent that loading through these kinds of various forces. So we understand that these loadings are in the plane of the plate. So something like that. Okay. Furthermore, we also set up our coordinate axis in such a way that the x and the x-axis and the y-axis are lying on that mid plane, so that the z-axis is along the height. All right. So we can say that z equal to minus h by 2 represents the bottom surface of this plate, and z equal to plus h by 2 represents the top surface of this plate. But all this discussion uh, uh, is just to concretize the idea of our geometry. What is very important to note is that the loading is in the plane of this plate itself, and very importantly, there is no loading taking place on the top surface, there is no loading taking place on the bottom surface. There is also no shearing load acting on the top surface, there is also no shearing load acting on the bottom surface. Okay, uh, now this kind of a situation is generally referred to as a canonical example of a plane stress case. Uh, the other thing, the plane strain. So for that we have the other situation. So here for the plane stress, we had a situation for a very thin plate. Now for plane strain, the canonical example will be in the form of a structure which may be in the form of a very long uh, column or a beam uh, which has a uniform cross section all throughout. So we can perhaps represent that in this fashion, that we have such a beam which has a certain cross section, and this beam extends in the longitudinal direction uh, infinitely. So along this longitudinal direction, it extends infinitely. Infinitely means, of course, these are actual physical structures. They are not really infinite, but very long. So when we are looking at a certain region, we don't really care about the ends. And very importantly, in terms of the loading, what we say is that the loading is taking place uniformly. Okay, so uniformly like this. So along the longitudinal axis. So this is a uniform loading along the longitudinal axis, and very importantly you note that there is no component of this loading, of this uniform loading, which is along the length of the beam. So it cannot be that we have a loading which is perhaps like this. We cannot have that thing, because this particular force will have a vertical component. It will also have a horizontal component which will have a a component along parallel to the longitudinal axis of the beam. So this kind of loading is not allowed. Okay, and very importantly, this loading has to be uniform along the longitudinal direction. And as I have already mentioned, you please note that the cross section of this structure, it has to be prismatic. It has to be uniform along the length of the beam. So that's what prismatic means. Uh, Now, if we have this kind of a situation, then you can perhaps imagine with a little bit of thought that no matter, so if I just take out a little slice out of this, so maybe if I just take out a little slice out of uh, this thing like this, take that slice out, and instead of that, if I go to this place, or if I come to this place and take another slice out, there will be absolutely no difference in the mechanical behavior of this slice or that slice or that slice. So no matter which location along the length of the beam I take such a slice out, it's exactly the same kind of thing. Okay, so in a way, those individual slices may perhaps give you the temptation of thinking that those individual slices are somewhat like this. Okay, but there are important differences, so we should not jump to such conclusions. There are similarities definitely, but there are very important differences, and those differences will be highlighted when we talk about the stresses and the strains. Now So this is the appropriate time that we can actually go into the various descriptions of the strains and the stresses. Uh, but before we do that, just a small note that in this plane strain case, you can understand that there will be no dependence along the z direction, which means very importantly that suppose we set up our coordinate axis like this, that, and this is the usual way that it is done, that along the longitudinal axis we take the z axis and uh, and we can take uh, the y axis like this. I want to have this parallel to the load. uh, so suppose this is the y axis, and let's say this is the x axis. So this is x, this is y, and this is z. Similarly here, although I'll be drawing it in this fashion here, the x and the y, but please note that this x and y are not lying on the top surface. This is actually lying on the mid plane of this, at the mid height, so it is within this plate. Now here in this plane strain case, what we will have is the u component of the displacement. So the displacement along the x direction, that will be dependent only on x and y. So that is what is algebraically meant by there being no difference between taking slices here or here or here. So because there is no dependence on the z, we are free to choose these slices anywhere. Okay. Similarly, the y component of the displacement will have a functional dependence only on x and y. Again, there is no z dependence. In a similar fashion here, the stress components which have anything to do with the z direction. Okay, so let me just write it here. So this is my x and this is my y. All the stress components that has anything to do with z, so sigma zz, sigma zx, and sigma yz, that will be equal to 0. Okay, this is very important to note. Furthermore, the sigma xy, that will be a function of xy. The sigma xx will be a function of xy, and the sigma yy will again be a function purely of x and y. Okay. So with this preliminary discussion, we can actually go into the individual descriptions of the plane stress and the plane strain. So we can do that on the next page. So first of all, the plane stress. All right. So we are immediately going to use the constitutive relations based on the linear elastic isotropic behavior which we learned in the previous chapter, and for that we have epsilon xx is equal to 1 by e sigma xx minus nu sigma yy plus sigma zz. And please note the form that I'm using is the very familiar generalized Hooke's law form that you all learned in your first year mechanics, and which was also referred to at the end of the pre-recorded video lecture of the constitutive relations. Similarly, we have for epsilon yy 1 by e sigma yy minus nu sigma xx plus sigma zz. epsilon zz is equal to 1 by E sigma zz minus nu sigma xx plus sigma yy. Before proceeding further, we immediately note that this sigma zz is 0, this sigma zz is 0, and this sigma zz is 0. Okay, so uh, further along, what we also note is that epsilon xy is 1 by twice g sigma xy, epsilon yz is 1 by twice g sigma yz, and because sigma yz is 0, therefore this epsilon yz itself is 0, and epsilon zx epsilon zx is equal to 1 by twice g sigma zx, and since sigma zx itself is 0, so epsilon zx is 0. Very importantly, however, you note that epsilon zz is not 0. Okay, so unlike our previous notions where when we said that we only want to consider a two-dimensional case, we sometimes maybe carelessly wrote the two-dimensional strain case by simply neglecting the epsilon 33 component or the epsilon zz component. You please note that that should not be done, especially if you are considering plane stress. And you will see that for the plane strain case, there will be a similar situation with the stresses. Now, overall, what we have now is that the epsilon xx from here is simply this kind of a thing. And because this sigma xx and sigma yy are themselves just pure functions of x and y, therefore epsilon xx is also a pure function of only x and y having no z dependence. In a similar fashion, epsilon yy is only a function of x and y because the sigma yy and the sigma xx present here are pure functions of x and y, and epsilon zz is also a function of x and y because it has this form. Epsilon xy, as we have already written here, is like this, which also is a function of only x and y. Epsilon yz is 0 and epsilon zx is 0. All right. Next, similarly, for the plane strain case, okay, let us look at that quickly. For plane strain, what we have is again, so we'll again begin with this generalized Hooke's law form. Now you see that I cannot say anything about just by using this equation itself, because if we go back to the first page here, you see the u is a function of x and y, the v is a function of x and y. So if you take the epsilon xx from here, so it will be del u del x. So epsilon xx is equal to del u del x is a function of x and y. The epsilon yy equal to del v del y, that is a function of x and y. Okay, so we cannot say anything about these being 0. In fact, they are not. And on the right hand side also, we cannot say anything immediately, but we'll see that some simplification will occur. Now, epsilon zz, for the plane strain case, we know that the epsilon zz is very much 0. Okay, so let us go back to the first page and note that the W, so let us not talk about the W immediately, but what I would want to say is this. So let us first talk about this plane stress for a moment. You see, just from what we have obtained from the plane stress case, the epsilon zz being non-zero, that basically means that in this case, the thin plate not having a value of epsilon zz equal to 0, not having epsilon zz equal to 0, basically means that there is a possibility of this height changing. So if epsilon zz is not 0, then this height can change. Now for this plane strain case, what we are going to say is that you can imagine that this is very long, and then maybe at the ends it is confined between two plates, okay, or between two rigid confines. So in that case, the W will be 0, and then the epsilon zz is identically 0. Okay, so when we come to this plane strain case, we can set this epsilon zz to 0. Now if that is so, this immediately means that sigma zz is equal to nu times sigma xx plus sigma yy. Now this becomes very interesting now, because you can substitute this expression back in here, so that what you will obtain basically is epsilon xx is equal to 1 by e sigma xx minus nu sigma yy minus nu square sigma xx minus nu square sigma yy. And from that you can easily obtain that if you consider these two, this is 1 minus nu square sigma xx, and this is nu plus nu square sigma yy, so you'll get a 1 plus nu common out of this, and take that out, and what remains inside is just this 1 minus nu times sigma xx minus nu sigma yy. In a similar fashion, from this relation you will have epsilon yy is equal to 1 plus nu by e 1 minus nu sigma yy minus nu sigma xx. Now what about the other three components? So epsilon xy, that is certainly not equal to 0, so our sigma xy will not be 0. But epsilon xz, or let's say yz, that is 0, so sigma yz will be very much 0. So this implies that sigma yz is 0, and epsilon zx is also 0, which basically means that our sigma zx is also going to be 0. So overall what we have in this plane strain case is that our sigma xx is not equal to 0, our sigma yy is not equal to 0. Very importantly, our sigma zz is also not equal to 0. So even though our epsilon zz is 0, but in the plane strain case, the sigma zz is not equal to 0. So this is the reverse case of what we had in the plane stress case, that epsilon what we had here in the plane stress case was that even though the sigma zz was 0, but the epsilon zz didn't turn out to be 0. So now we have epsilon zz equal to 0, but sigma zz is not equal to 0. And for the rest, we have sigma xy not equal to 0, but sigma xz is equal to sigma yz equal to 0. Okay, so since we have been using sigma zx, let me correct that to sigma zx. All right, so these are the so this is the situation we are currently in as we are talking about plane stress and plane strain. Now the new thing, so this is basically just an application of whatever we have been studying in the previous chapters. Now going forward, what we'll do is to introduce the new concept of the stress function, which I alluded to at the beginning of today's discussion. All right, so with this I'll end this lecture, and we'll go on to the discussion of Airy stress function in the next part of the lecture. Thank you very much.